just like a black one, fine.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, deal.
Actually, no, I'll take the G2. So.
Very nice, very nice.
Good pick. How's Mac doing? Hell yeah. They rocked when I judged them. Holy shit.
Thank you. I'm trying to get them up to speed. Me and my little small school.
Their card quality was bananas. They cut everyone I saw too. I was like, shit.
Anyone not ready for this round?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Good, if you're good, man.
Everyone's good?
Talk about these very young kids getting gender-affirming care. They don't tell you what that is they're actually giving very young girls double mastectomies. They want to castrate these young boys. That's wrong. 10, 12, 13-year-old kids, based on gender dysphoria, 80% of it resolves anyways by the time they get older. I think these doctors need to get sued for what's happening. I'm sorry.
Note: the references to nuclear panic overshadow the trans messaging. Consider omitting.
There was a turtle by the name of Bert, and Bert the turtle was very alert. When danger threatened him, he never got hurt. He knew just what to do. He ducked and covered.
The first nuclear bomb was built at Los Alamos in 1945, ushering in an international security regime in which the threat of total annihilation became a seemingly new reality. In order to manage this threat, the birth of the atomic age invested the heteronormative domestic sphere with a new ideological meaning. Atomic blasts were measured by their impact on a large-sized house and light of the nuclear family's role as bulwark against the communist threat. The white domesticity held the public acclimate to atomic tech. The bikini was famously named after the atoll in Marshall Islands, where the AAC tested its might its weapons. Attractive women were dubbed bombshells, named and implied their beauty could be devastating. Cold War culture equated the protection of sanctified white domestic sphere with the protection of the nation. The nuclear family is at the heart of patriotic anti-communist white life. Enter Christine Jorgensen, a former soldier from the Bronx. Christine entered a pharmacy in 1949, asking for estradiol, telling the purpose of her research project. After going to Denmark for sex reassignment surgery, her transition quickly made international headlines with People Today reporting in 1954 after other transsexual stories had broken in the media. The next year, recurrent hydrogen bomb headlines reports of sex changes are becoming the most consistently startling world news. Jorgensen's hypervisibility meant that the spectacle of transsexuality had mushroomed into public consciousness during the early days of the Cold War, with all the force of a blistering hot wind roaring across the Trinity test site. This new nuclear force, in tandem with the bomb, was weaponized to reduce political economy oriented around the consolidation of the nuclear family by upholding the sanctity of white womanhood. Skidmore 11. Trans women, primarily Jorgensen, the most proximity white women who gained the most visibility. White women, trans women were able to articulate transsexuality as acceptable subject position through the embodiment norms of white women, domesticity, respectability, and heterosexuality. Marshall almost superior verb descendant Lisa Newton were less intelligent than agreed white women therefore appear to subjects to ridicule, racial and gender ideologies, regulators bodies appear within the public sphere of legitimate narratives. Stretch allowed the figure of the transsexual to have coherence, public culture, and political rhetoric, upheld the nuclear family as the American ideal, social formation, promising national defense against communism, social formations. The threat and stability of the nuclear family fell under scrutiny. The U.S. Senate held hearings on homosexual spring. The birth of thousands of lesbians and gay men. Also increased police surveillance as one heterosexual and domestically oriented woman. Jorgensen's appearance assured continued dominance of gender roles and reference to heteropatriarchy. Jorgensen's intelligibility rested upon her participation in nuclear family unit. Jorgensen appeared in several photographs when she was cooking in the kitchen with her mother. This produced Jorgensen's body through notion of middle class respectability. Jorgensen's pretty, personable, and pleasant by any standard. Jorgensen's femininity is embodied by her, enabled by her embodiment of respectability, vital aspect of white womanhood because of its connection to civility. Because to be read as acceptable, Jorgensen's body had to be intelligent and heterosexual. Jorgensen distanced herself from homosexuality across her after surgeons successfully reassigned her sex. She did not trust as a woman until the sex on her passport had officially been changed. Jorgensen placed her embodiment in terms of proper U.S. citizenship and narrated her sex reassignment through her allegiance to the disciplining apparatus of the U.S. state. Jorgensen articulated conservative sexual norms to assure the readers that her public presence was not motivated by political gender, seeming to challenge the sanctity of heteropatriarchy. Jorgensen was able to prevent the person from defining her because she had access to the institutional power of white womanhood. The resolutional call to debate nuclear forces cannot be detached from the nuclear family logics that shape the contours of subjectivity. Jorgensen's story was spectacular because domesticity is fundamentally the nuclear family unit, yet transsexual technologies have the capability to threaten the foundations of the U.S. empire. In order to manage the threat, the U.S. had to create the image of an acceptable transsexual in relation to racialized systems of hierarchy. Just as nuclear tech split the atom to destroy matter, transsexual tech destroyed the materiality of sex, inventing new epistemological frameworks for the production of embodiment. Jorgensen's basic spectacularity can be read as a map of the transsexual phenomenon, ontologizing practice of resignify the relationship between gender subjects and sex flesh, remapping the global spectrum of her transsexuality as white post-colonial phenomenon. Her presence racializes others, or rendering opaque her own racialization. Jorgensen functions as a white screen out of which is projected all that is fantasized as the metropole wealth, glamour, mobility, liberation, self-fashioning, situated according to a spatialized racial hierarchy that locates whiteness as the colonizing paradigm's point of origin through the figure of Christine Jorgensen. The outlines of new U.S. polity of global political empire linking bodies, identities, territories, and populations. becomes visible. Any discussion of nuclear reductions that fails to theorize the intimate connections between nuclearism and the family will reproduce the logistics of empire and anti-trans violence that mark transits as a threat to creation. As countless anti-trans bills are introduced and passed, debate to a narrative coherence centered around apocalypticism and supposedly liberal policy discussions to lock in ongoing logics of elimination. Trans people are forced to erase our histories, archives, and stories for safety or transition while the scientific study of transits is conducted by cis people. Transits only gains coherence within the rehearsed scripts of debate if it is localizable, measurable, and observable, like the atom. In response, this debate is about alternative world-making tactics, what we do here and now to make life livable. The 1AC's program of Trans Existential holds together a dual set of commitments towards trans archival practice, liberation, and networks of care. The challenge, the epistemic violence of spectacular narratives like Jorgensen's. The precarity of nuclear forces demands a constellation of shared collectivity. Call it to one cisgender society, construct trans subjects as objects in medical discourse development. Trans archive is obscured by non-affirmative within cisgender society. Propose an alternative program with the full suspension of cisgender categories that I call transgender existentials and certain assumptions which are so deeply ingrained the systematic procedures required for the complete suspension of the trans phenomenologist brackets the cisgender attitude cultivated a disposition to organize society based on mandatory gender identification through an intimate return to trans experience checks seem completely anarchic from the classic cisgender perspective. Uneasy blending of poetry, lit, theater, and zines, the archival considerations of trans stories, and the complex means by which these narratives are distorted by a cisgender frame. What is our history? Who are our dead? How do we come to misunderstand and misrecognize one another? For poster genders for restrictions trans people into a relatively coherent set of events to unhappy childhood conflations one of one's trans with queerness to epiphany, confessional moment, beginning of transition, and closure. What is at stake is a suspension of cisgender attitudes to produce a trans archive on the men's nevertheless incomplete commentary notion of gender is now the epistemological crisis concerning sex characteristics of person and Salman adopt a cisgender orientation towards trans identity by opposing the unity of trans experience and some shared narrative coherence. Trans existential proposes the trans people have an existential rather than identity unity. Trans people share a unity of situation, project, and responsibility rather than a resemblance between properties. Gender dysphoria describes the alienation of freedom experienced by trans subjects in cisgender society. Trans existential sees the unity of trans people is essentially precarious and the result of a shared collective resolution when we choose to transition that appeals to revolutionary political consequence requires upturning cisgender society. The neutralization of cisgender society must extend beyond the armchair of the phenomenologist into the material neutralization of cisgender society, which is to say, into the streets. Trans existentialism demands a restriction of the nuclear forces which constitute the violence of the nuclear family. This restriction emerges from the impossibility of trans society supplanting the nuclear family and the nuclear state with a fugitive collectivity. For those who have been disappeared, for Delisa, Marta, Laverne, for those who haven't been invited, for Letitia, trans existentialism is the company of tea times, bodies beginning to creep back through the house. These are the sites of trans belonging. Production boards as production lines as chopping boards, mutual aid shared out on plates, the quiet nights of caffeine, red wine, conversation, the afternoons of group meets, collations of what becomes community, these moments of autumn turning up to winter with the demise of daylight, the rapid switch into the wane of early afternoons, the air electric to reap content, its failure, the practice of youthful irresponsibility, the impractice of sharing domestic spaces with strangers. She moves her hands to maintain the connection of the wood directly into the presence of memory again. Might all wooden tables link through the form of the feminist diaspora, the practices of collective care, mutual aid, the communal form. She thought of Sarah Ahmed, of Kitchen Table Press, of Jim Ritterwan's book, of how this constellation could span backwards through the decades, forwards to future formations. It's impossible, though, with all the touristification, but this is how it goes. We get together around a table, a kitchen table. We talk while chopping vegetables. Remember when that random person stopped to ask us about the zine, the new zine? All of that coheres around a communal table, dinner bowls, the lift and carry of voices, herbal array, the play of tunes run memories backward, the bringing together of queer and trans optimism, a possible politics of new socialities, a communal form. Affects cohere us together, solidarity, substantiating context, institutional or predictable, obscure or precarious, a flow of light feminists through a stairwell, how the fabrics and thoughts of the body materialize, what categories of being, what labeling denying humanity are necessary for solidarity to emerge. Solidarity, a process of sublimation with the development of capitalist social relations, the labor market to the possibilities of queer social forms, percepts and sounds and memories having a profound physical effect on the body. But is this enough? What forms of social, cultural, and material organization might be assembled even within the capitalist day world such that we could feed, enrich, maintain each other, break down isolation? Collectivity teaches and motivates to orient our work, our attentions, and care towards each other. But why the need to bring ourselves together like this, to feel a sense of belonging, sure, in a context where difference and precarity might have denied a sense of home, to pool the recompense of our labor sold for wages, to show that we are more than our value, to build something for a community, to demonstrate the power of working together materially, to know that we are not alone. Precarious queer and trans people are used to watching our homes disappear with the creep of capital bulldozed or rendered to us as a spectacular image, but the anxiety and the power play and the meetings, small moments of organization and shared work built around the table, the relationships. The private dwelling was a home made in smaller ways. Within it, reproductive labor established itself according to need, supply, gender, time, race, dwell longing to the home abandoned. Fragments of love pale, stretching through the curtains, damp with cries, melodrama, modernity, and all of where we are pushed by the call, demand, and dispersal of body. Give me my timer.
You ready?
Yeah.
Does the app call for a political restriction on what nukes we have or where we can use
Well,
them?
I'm confused. We've said that the nuclear family is a nuclear force. I don't know what you mean by a political restriction.
I'm asking like what nuclear warheads or missiles.
Well, we've
you know,
said
that's right.
that the nuclear family is a nuclear force. I don't know what it means to affirm a political restriction, but we certainly restrict the nuclear family.
And anything beyond that?
Well, I don't know. I would have to. Like,
Okay.
yeah.
The 1EC begins with a description of the first bomb and how like white notions of the family were then ushered in to link the protection of the nation to the protection of the heteronormative family. Is the 1EC's project compatible with advocacy that not only in some sense deconstructs the nuclear family but also demands the end of our warheads and missiles?
Well, what advocacy would that be?
Like, for example, like combining it with a demand for nuclear disarmament is the question.
Well, I think that
Part of the
you.
1EC are you asking about?
Any part of it. The 1EC's advocacy. Just like, is it compatible with?
Well, I don't know what you mean by
I'm really confused, but we've said that trans existentialism is necessary in response to the nuclear force that is the nuclear family, because trans archival practice, networks of care, and liberatory strategies are good.
Okay. One 1EC quote is that the neutralization of cisgender society must extend beyond the armchair of the phenomenologist into the material neutralization of cisgender society, which is to say into the streets.
Mm-hmm.
The material neutralization of cisgender society, what does that look like? What is the kind of blueprint that
The
offers us for
programs of
process?
trans existentialism brackets the cis attitude of narrative coherence from our politics. That looks like three things. It opens up a commitment towards trans archival practice, liberatory tactics, and networks of care. I would say that all three of those things are very much a material neutralization of cisgender society. Is there one in particular you want to hear about or are wondering about?
Those archival practices, I think, are likely to become pertinent. Can you elaborate more on how the 1EC's relationship
Well,
to that?
It's a way of, I think a phrase that we might use might be like the 1AC has read against the bias grain of the topic to understand the ways that the intimate connections and entanglements between nuclear forces and white womanhood as like a nuclear force that upholds the nuclear family, right? And that opens up our politics to, like, I guess, a destruction of that nuclear force, right? The other two pieces that the 1AC affirms as part of trans existentialism look like the liberatory strategies and the networks of care. Examples we'll probably give look like Miss Major's needle sharing program, look like New World Disorder that takes up public space and uses it as kind of a place for building trans community, right?
The order is too often the case. May I borrow your stand?
Yeah.
Thanks.
I'm just pulling it up. I'm not good.
Brian,
I need 1 second.
Sure.
Great. Good.
First off is topicality. Interpretation: the OIC must propose and defend an instance of the resolution, and the next should never join anything else. Nuclear forces means delivery platforms, weapons, and infrastructure. Represents 23. Nuclear forces refers to delivery platforms, weapon systems. CC and infrastructure necessary to conduct nuclear operations. Restrict requires setting limits on something. Writing grid 11. Restrict define to set bounds or limits to. Disarming requires comprehensive abolition of all U.S. nukes. Capital 14. Nuclear disarmament. The comprehensive universal prevalent abolition of all nukes has long been the most written item on the agenda. United States means throughout the geographic territory. Mitchell intended the term United States must be singular power, must be exercised throughout the U.S. Does this term designate the whole or any particular portion? This question can have been one answer is within the U.S. They violate each of the above words requirements. 2 impacts. First is fairness. Non-topical advocacies allow the act to unilaterally determine negative positions and create an incentive to minimize viable contestation. Debate's a game. Competition precedes pedagogy because it's a procedural question. Second is clash. Boundless topics spread name prep thin, making focused research and innovation impossible. Debates with depth of contestation make us better scholars and advocates, which turns their impacts. Prioritize debate's potential to forge a technique of argumentative refinement because that's its only unique benefit. Next up is the CAPK. The act is subsumed within circuits of production. The 1EC participates in the production of cultural capital even if and especially if they win their solvency claims. Spires in 15. Active zine construction seek to create feminist conscious zines, constitute a kind of therapy, recognized collective. Rhetoric ignores the role that media and consumer culture played in appropriating body within mainstream culture movement. Thought for a media boycott, presses interest, more coverage, and student characteristics. Being inappropriate by corporate institutions, but also contain neutralize apolitical protest culture. Avril Lavigne, Pink were signed to major mainstream record labels linked with punk, economics, and production have everything to do with the policy of the product. Their emergence has popularly rendered them already co-opted, represent corporate package girl power. Mainstream artists have taken part in multi-million-dollar advertising campaigns for the beauty industry. Levine with Sony, Pink for cover girl, transgressive qualities are contained regardless of the actual content, pathways of capital, form, produce feminist flaw. The takes that are subsumed by artistic performance of individuals movement, fully absorbed. First claims to fraud and uncensored view, bus brand value offers great integrated market platforms and ad consumer base, cynically transform the feminist community into a marketing platform. Profits allegedly flow back to this process, not transparent. The second continues to market is more precious to contemporary capitalism and its consumer culture than that of young women. Capitalism causes extinction and violence at the margins. The question must center around what tactics catalyze and mobilize a global struggle. Escalante 19. The world is in a dire state. Production and endless drive for resource creating climate crisis that exists on the brink of potential extinction. Governments are turning to fascist leaders to squash fears. Most marginalized suffer. World burns from America's phosphorus smoldering. The need for revolutionary movement has never been so clear. People realize capitalism and imperialism are the problem. We must unite. The question is then, what tactics and what ideas to unite around to embrace? A vision of epistemological skepticism is to embrace to feed the masses who want to know how to fight back Marxism with self-criticism and insistence on incorporating ideas of critics, creating means for unifying worlds with anti-colonial struggles. No victory without revolutionary science. We must defend this possibility. Vote negative for communist organizing. That requires collective struggle and the establishment of centralized organization to inform both theory and practice. Green 16. Loose connections suit a market economy, but not political organizing. These take limited gender, race, and imperial legacy are an integral part of class relations. Feminist, anti-racist, and anti-colonial struggles are the ways in which unified class struggles can be lost. Radical change is better than wanting radical change, organizational reliability, and accountability. If communism remains limited, lecture, all there won't be anything powerful. PKK established direct democratic council change comes from below. If it's based on the people, none of this would be happening. If it wasn't for a vanguard revolutionary territory, projected communist ideas at the forefront of political discourse, buildings need to be fed, shelter, provided water, requires planning. We must dispose of the environmental bombs. Democracy requires structured, peak, transparent council system is only fair to provide that. We evolve from critical engagement and real life struggles are our starting point. This improves theory and improves practice. The case. 1. Vote negative on presumption. The app has to solve the harms they identify through a change from the status quo. They aren't. First, the affirmative conflates scholarship with praxis. The reading of Vote AC does not actualize new forms of knowledge or archival, but strategically uses academic work to produce a ballot, which means ACE point. This debate's insufficient to change community norms because the ballot does not create change in of itself. There's only a risk that debate is worse because it necessitates negation, not dialogue. BC point. It's already solved because it can be read in other ways through community outside of competition, still inside debate. CISA point. Signaling. Voting AF doesn't affirm their scholarship. Reading and listening to the OAC is sufficient. Pretending the ballot is what unlocks AF solvency, cements placebo activism, and creates violent attachments to debate wins. Second, the affirmative lacks a telos, which means we never know when we have done enough, which turns solvency because it maximizes exhaustion and creates no distinction between action and inaction. Other models allow the AF to win through massive generalizations of the status quo with no mechanism to resolve it. A focus on the material basis of gender is necessary. The AF's attempt at deconstruction fails. Rock Killing 23. Self-proclaimed anti-essentialist politics purporting to deconstruct categories. Theorists never provide material analysis of capitalist social relations. They draw on deconstruction and dehistoricize the coding genealogy. Think about gender sexual relations discretely. They are a best level pluralism in which class struggle is replaced by interest group advocacy. Trans feminist zine writing fails. Under-resourced magnifies exhaustion, lack of distribution, and publishing politics all exacerbate disparity and doom the app's politics. That's Gilly in 17. Fundamental tenet of feminist print culture is that feminist knowledge creation must be distributed. How a text comes to publication determines what rating is distributed. The text did not get published related who never lack money for writers and presses. Contributors are not paid, and because contributors were activist women of color, Essex had begun in labor love, editors did not receive payment. Barbara Smith's labor they kept going. There were also differences in political vision. Type of work never has enough financial resources to support it properly. The most of the anthology did on historiography, but not enough to steer the feminist movement away from a retreat of the individual. The 1AC's explanation of the home, the kitchen table, and domestic spaces reproduces the logic of propriety. It's indebted to a politics that stakes out occupation by what individuals as a common sense retreat into the safety of organizational structures. This means the 1AC's performative rhetoric is a double turn with the 1AC's advocacy. That's where I'm up in 23. Kitchen table is outcoming central technology in the modern civilization process. Looking at the kitchen table as object of desire and orientation within the context of nation building project and how it serves the body, disciplining technology despite debilitating confrontation hold on the fantasy of harmony family. This cruel optimistic attachment are not accidental and tells about the affective formation and role of the kitchen table as sentimental object of desire, signaling aesthetic. I feel the happy supportive family, this fantasy praise and the mitigation of my personhood, socially relocated and circulatory comfortability in my family world. Our private thoughts is projected out as an intimate and public sphere of private individuals inhabiting their own effective strategies. Domestic space is essential for disseminating ideas associated with citizenship. English etiquette to develop developed during the 1500s, providing codified social construct to the good wife's guide, culminating in respectable domesticity. It was aimed particularly at women, general population, were to police and discipline themselves, the kitchen table because of technology and biopower, functioning as a deployment of sexuality as well as women's unpaid labor, discipline, and children. Food also functions as a civilizing medium of the manner in which food was consumed, as well as what types drawn to the sense of class, gender, sexuality, racial, and ethnic identification, cultivating social relationships rather than being the main purpose. Public-private ritual presented being publicly shamed or embarrassed for poor discipline. A table translations is a demented state institution where body pacification is the expected social norm of dual in private fancy word functions for protective shields for sensibilities of new ruling class. The portrayal of the kitchen table is operational about legacy of etiquette, text, macroism, and a microcosm endlessly reflecting each other. Social ethic with the stick on the nuclear family is a fetishized commodity. I'm ready for cross-sex.
Okay. Okay. I want to talk about your interpretation on topicality. United States means throughout the geographic territory. What does this mean for the actor of apps?
For that, what apps?
For actors. Like who is the actor of topical apps under your interpretation?
Well, we just defined the United States as throughout the United States. So if you want to say like revolutionary movements could like grab the nukes and get rid of them, as long as it's throughout the United States, that's topical.
Okay. So your model, alright, so your model allows movement apps. Okay.
But you have to get rid of that movement needs to culminate in getting rid of the like delivery platforms and like actual nuclear warheads, which we think your affirmative does not.
Okay, so then I guess to my understanding, the negative would be allowed to read a dissent to getting rid of nuclear forces?
Correct.
Alright, so can people read NFU into this?
Yes.
Okay, sure. I guess I'm confused then how you resolve like claims about like unilaterally determining negative positions. Like I guess right. So like, well, because the app gets to now say that they're a movement or a topical app.
Yep.
Is that accurate? Yep.
But neg ground is based off of that app getting rid of nuclear weapons.
Okay, so what does that ground look like? I guess.
Like the assurance and deterrence facade, CMR, politics, elections, the political implications of any of the strategies.
Okay, that makes sense to me, I guess. I want to talk about the CAPK.
Sure.
So I guess your argument about why the app links is because it's a zine?
In part, that the production of the lines that are like zines constitute a kind of therapy recognized as collective, that kind of proves that the affirmative is not like a radical transgression through the use of a zine, but
that's
rather...
not the threshold for like a link to the CAPK. So I guess why does that mean that
What do
you
you think is
make
the threshold?
revolution impossible? So you have to win that we make the alternative impossible, right? Like that's how
less likely to happen. Some disagreement with the 1AC. Sure.
Okay. So the threshold for link is any disagreement with the 1AC?
Isn't that the definition?
Why do zines make communist organizing impossible? Because I kind of do think that communists like write zines all the time.
Well, it's not that it makes it impossible, it's that the telos of your project is not an effective one, because it's more focused on collective kind of feel good, we pass out a zine and feel good about ourselves instead of talking about specific strategies to organize against.
Okay, what strategies does the 1MC talk about to organize?
The piece of alternative evidence, the Kuhn evidence, says that we need to organize through like establishing a vanguard party that is anti-imperialist and
what are the tactics you use to get there? Because you just said that was important.
we could some of the examples it lists is like organizing in like unionization and like going into workplaces and telling our comrades about.
Where did you unionize?
Amazon. I mean, I work at a school. I'm gonna be teaching next year, so I might talk to my coworkers and say.
Okay.
I'm just gonna take like a. Did you send? I don't. You did not send it to me.
Sorry.
It's a message.
Okay, stop at 906.
906, you said.
Case K.
You said critique and then topicality.
Yes.
I'm just downloading it now. I have one doc that just says the words yay debate. Is that accurate?
Oh, maybe you didn't say.
Because it's so.
That's what the document said, but it was supposed to have cards in it too.
I love it. This is the best doc I've ever received. I won't even lie. That frankly, you got me.
Yeah, let me try one more time.
If today was April 1st.
No, literally.
That'd be hilarious.
You should have said, yeah, that is the doc. I would have commit to the bit.
I'm just gonna talk. Hopefully that one has cards in it.
I see that has cards in it, like when I open it in the Dropbox.
Yeah, I think it didn't save before I sent the email. I'm just gonna
Tech wizard, that would make sense.
Ryan is low-key so bad at computers. I just had to expose her person. She's so bad at computers.
I so understand the December cards. Not that you.
Everyone's good. We are turning Kansas limits, setting a politics and resolution, celebrating violence against trans people via the dominance of the nuclear family. Its constituted with the violence of nuclear weapons, Jorgensen's hypervisibility demonstrates the creation of ideal citizens along the backdrop of anti-communist propaganda and proves our impact arguments of domesticity and spectacularity that implicate the negative's ability to access their impacts and meet the absentee. Now they cannot win the debate without answering to the way that white domesticity is implicated in nation-building projects, the necessity of the eradication of deviant populations, presumption, the assholes, 3 ways, A, trends, archival practice, the 163, telling the Jorgensen's narrative of the zinitiary of resources that counter the coherence of anti-trans narratives and bankrupt epistemic projects. B is the liberatory projects, the unity of revolutionary political projects that bracket the system to attitude out of politics and move towards material action against transphobic and racialized violence. C, with star or bash, I can see networks care about how to describe the affective, immaterial, collective, and non-creative, and chance sociality, sharing of food, shelter, time, and energy through things like mismatches, needle sharing programs, or new one disorders taking up public spaces for living through the necessity of the app. Now, no presumption validation, transparency, inside any risk. The app's key for collective resistance and survival means you should refuse to presume to a transphobic status quo. Jack the team, the warrants. First, there's no conflation of scholarship and practice. That's our archival reading practice. The failure to understand the intimate dimensions of such archival practices proves a dislike to both the alternative and the model. B, there's no outside competition incentives to continue to engage in tests or else the trans KC. There's no signaling must be validated in this context in which 2 people in the panel have participated to transmit themselves both. And Ian coaches, for example, Jay from Jimmy who is engaging in transmit tradition means you all have been touched by transmit and know that it's not non-NDT. Second, the ST loss is a restriction of the nuclear family, which means we solve now the raw enough evidence the TLSA answered about the Rockwell evidence we solved at the 1C was reading the way the capital social relations have shaped the heteronormative white domestic we've historicized its connection to the Red Scare and Love Scare, which is material analysis. Also, essentialism is bad. The whole evidence makes a distinction between essentializing bodies and projects. The first is bad. The second, the assholes of the Gilly. Now the Gilly evidence is not only to say the existence of a bad disease does not indicate them as formats about particular stuff that does not contain the political telos and are made with unpaid labor, not the app. The political telos of the app is one that is anti-capitalist and moves towards collectivity that was above. We don't rely on master distributed software and unpaid creative labor returns to the current because compensation for care is a logical exchange that is neoliberal. The card is in the context of publishing. It's obviously not the last. The last evidence is wrong. One is critique of the home, critique of the home is a critique of the propriety logic that makes the table space domestic. Now the word about happy families is obviously not a play of the app because the app has put the kitchen table in the context of the nuclear family, which is what structure the balance of cards is talking about in the first place. Finally, it turns examples final. Oh my god, my document. Okay, yeah, that's good. Go to the cafe. The spires of social reproduction, such as capitalism, which means relation to the one sees someone as assets, has access to social reproduction, which joins with armor, productive for domestic which under capitalist exploitation because further theories nuclear family means it reproduces the spectacle of womanhood because the reading capitalist sponsors, absent and analytic of the gender dynamics to labor that turns the cathedral to diminishing returns as not having to labor for the Communist Party for collective means exhaustion trades. People run out of steam before the 10 units of food programs ever get off the ground, which is the question of the proximity to one C proves. Uniqueness goes out because nuclearism is a part of the night. After to extinguish chance like found the nuclear family has already socialized comrades into the party reproducing to violence, forcing trans, resistance and vertical mechanisms trades off with the collective practice of trans, existentialism that key now means our impact always is about the here and now of how the strategy is violence for trans people. Anyways, the party proliferates intimate violence against trans people, which is the reason why external sides of energy are care and crucial to enable trans people to participate in discussions of the party line, which means either that after the permutation, people solves one see Holland Evans says trans, existentialism key to more move towards collectivity because back from the cisgender attitude out of politics that opens up the unity of political projects. Answer the word about Zines on case the impact, even if they win the old false impact arguments or anti-trans, they replicate violent attachment to narrative coherence of land trans people like Spencer and me for the decline of certain civilization because we didn't do enough to communist demand which means for rhetoric. Obviously, Zine is not the make or break point of climate change, which means you should only value impacts that are proximate to linked arguments. Anything else holds trans people to an impossible standard and would be resolved by the permutation and the alternative classes and words out trans comrades written by their author as Alante, who is organizing the Marxist Center that's Alan 23 almost no leaders present in the MC Bartlett from the base hundreds of people burnt out of left thinking politics are impossible. MC has a disproportionate number of trans people, transgender people form a key part of MC's leadership. This makes sense given the transition to political belief. We're not for the type-based building, we would not have had the region had all of MC's theories came from trans people divided. They did not continue to go away with the main test-based building when trans organizers away. But the community stored the people rather than seeing the revolution potential of their own spaces and focusing ourselves on economic mass organizing based on trade mass organizations which had no political reason to unify the failure of based on trade unifying political organizations sense from the same economicism that which led to the true north the nature of their cadre. The alternative gets go out to work, for example, putting Che Guevara on t-shirts are literal transparent and produced by statesmen cause because prove that the alternative gets walking for it. The aspect in turn the cannot exist without the next diversity here the app has and only proves the result in the worst political one. Because never the alternative is found trans people means you default out third. One is the postures about materiality which is question how you organize together the alternative evidence well and the Marxism good but doesn't describe what organizing looks like on the ground, especially when we're reading empirical examples of the alternative failing between the output ways, especially since we've performed it for primary use trans existentialism as a framework for anti-capitalist organizing only. We have an explanation of the process by which our method happens because all this description of the reckoning procedure trans phenomenology solves the alternative but not the other way around. I'm going to go to framework 1. We meet restricting nuclear families first to a program for trans existentialism. Second, counterinterpretation of the app should be a method for restricting nuclear forces. For example, disarming the nuclear family. That's Column 21, disarming the nuclear family. Definition of nuclear family since the dawning of nuclear power to inevitability with the whole world backdrop from modern side again. Geopolitical landscape, the performance of domesticity, blurs the line between the two nuclear family. Use as an anti-invasion tool, domestic containment, price preservation through the traditional family unit enforcement can redemonization, secure gender roles, stabilize and post-war society, settling for the wrong reasons, dismantles the nuclear family. Finally, their interpretation is bad, doesn't solve limits of social because our model also explodes limits of the actor risk are often so ways what it means you vote affirmative because there's terminal defense here. Their model that they can't resolve now our offense were imperturbably predictable limits is the internal and all their impacts. There's narrative coherences admits narrative coherence means the moment we speak in the register of chances we're not speaking about the topic. Instead we were told that we're vomiting off a register and it's incoherent opposites. Maybe if we came from more respectable segments of humanities departments we'd have quote a perfectly reasonable view that should be adopted by anyone with half a brain, but trans can only be incoherent within a narratively coherent framework. This is new. For example, in 2013 they said this is not a debate. The rules of structure of debate have evolved to ensure arguments are logical. This is what I would expect from a 10-year-old, which means limits are informed by form and content to decide what fairness class look like because their model puts inclusion before meaningful participation. There are 3 arguments. First is that predictability is humanly negotiated. That's why multiple current trans entities predict the nuclear family. Ask the limits that are arbitrary and dogmatic, proven by 1C classics. Questions about nuclear weapons not grounded in any part of the 1C. Second, the 1C was evidence says there are many nuclear forces is built on white domestic city. In the film, the 1C proves that it's connected to cis protection logic. The protection of large houses has seen can each other bombshell. White beauty undergo what is considered predictable under their model because they're unspoken parts of nuclear forces that turn every argument about clash in the vacuum of the block codes for. Third, the impacts of the objection to making their model require accepting the nuclear families and stasis which creates society gives which racialized trans populations are judged. Only our model solves by reducing the clash of nuances, agreements, critical theory like Marx's basis and failure common record rights to chance while Justin Rice Striker, which proves there's ample ground. They're going to make arguments about why the ballot doesn't solve our model. That's not true. Remember, for example, when members of Blueville would concede the round to show it's not about the ballot, and people would stop engaging with arguments there, which will ensure competitive incentives because those incentives are key to make them engage with trans pedagogical methods in the first place. There's no framing issue here that limits disclosure on non-unique because debate operates with the coexistence plan in critical debate now, which means putting negative results in the worst version of their model because it makes debates more stable by removing critical ground but putting out results in the best version of our model because this was asked to have don't have anything to do with nuclear forces. The exclusion of federal government for the best views and that's predictable to a community already moving to a million framework. Next, the TVA and Switch are both epistemic extractivism that rendered the app narratively coherent by sanitizing for normative debate. The disarm TVA will not solve any part of the app that they will claim it does because it benefits them to posit the model is content neutral, which means sister archiving, and said to both of them, everyone on this panel has been touched by trans debate in various ways, which means I know you can feel our argument about meaningful participation. Our model is called Stay Dead Trans Politics Must recognize the sense of black radical tradition, refusing the insidious sauces filling up in favor. Even more radical politics that sees and scatters and it also says what that's only this refusal of their model can actualize the political base for alternatives to the West's national form that flourished in 23 black trans theory queers. What is transgender public that pushes against their component form is going to offer these debates or create a debate throughout cross-points Balkan trans scholarship, their common interests and strategies building off of one another to generate for these petticoats using debates and many ground to hash our well-time organizations work critically to help participants in national horizons of political engagement and call the question ourselves refusing that political solutions opens political space for alternatives to access lessons we learn do not spill out there. Stephen Scatter and say with us that destabilization compatibility with paradigms of safety, security, and safety in favor of a doubt of the facilities, cloud care planning, color free debate is amazing set together the conditions we live in require inventive, subversive practices developed by black communities and coaches and proliferated and critical trajectories, critical argumentation are parsing the problematics of single issue political frames, non-black scholars grapple with our identities, black critical argumentation, non-black trans scholars based on identities and invitation to transform how we theorize and that trans political school we should not accept Saturday sweet, have to dream bigger by fashioning new blueprints for daring to imagine futures made invisible and ready to possible. Refusal is an unending project. The model and access are often first. We carry the zine on the negative and the act of intimate intentional prior creation is something we take to tournaments in our daily lives and move through the world with. When they say we need on the negative, they don't care about the quality or depth of those debates or the meaning of those debates, just a resolution focus. Second, if it's predictable in the negative, it's predictable now. Third, infinite prep and small acts are inevitable, especially under their model. But we know just support an ideological orientation towards the world we propose an active strategy to strap to which answers all the case turns as well.
I'm going to answer this first. Oh, okay, I got that. Are you ready for cross-ex?
Yep.
This Larson piece of evidence says, quote,
Sorry.
we must, quote, study the lessons found in the black radical tradition. What part of the 1AC was the black radical tradition?
I think there's a few arguments. One is that the arguments we read in the debates that we have, which is true of everyone, are always touched by the black radical tradition because all of debate is indebted to that tradition. We've made an argument about why your model is a disavowal of that and why our model is necessary to engage in the types
But
of
we've also been touched by the black radical tradition.
We made an argument about why your model disavows that.
Why does our
the
model
Larson
disavow
evidence
that?
says
Without
that political orientations would seek to spill out reinforced necropolitical solutions to empire.
But
And
sacrifice
rather-
portions of our communities.
Yeah.
And instead of doing that, we should stay with that, use that to orient our politics, not to spill out the level of institutionality.
I'm more interested in how the affirmative studies the lessons of the black radical tradition.
Well, we think that those lessons are varied, and we think that one of the central lessons is that what is assigned does not have to be accepted. We think that the 1AC takes that up to bracket the cisgender attitude out of our politics in order to refine trans politics.
How has the
away from
1NC
white supremacy.
adopted the cisgender attitude?
Yeah, we think two arguments. One is that the Hollett evidence makes an argument about the unity of bodies and unity of situations. We think that the type of engagement that your model forwards says that, for example, trans people can be included into your model because they can read a plan and then we all have great clash. We think that type of inclusion is what Hollett describes as a unity of bodies because it assumes that meaningful trans participation in debate is a question of trans people being able to do debate rather than trans us being meaningful in its participation.
Well, but we aren't saying like the implication of the judges voting for topicality isn't them saying you should get out of debate.
Well,
It's
so,
saying we couldn't
hang on,
prepare
no,
them.
it's looking at this beautiful, enriching, compounding archive of debate and saying, you know what, the clash there was not meaningful enough. It did not do what it should have done.
Right. Our argument is about the way that trans is allowed to come
Why
into
should
the
we not
archive of your model.
strive for systems and models that promote more engagement rather than
I disagree that your model promotes engagement. Even if you say that it promotes engagement, we said that engagement is not meaningful.
But that
And
seems
it's a
like
question of engagement for who, and it's a question of engagement on what over what content and on whose terms, right?
Yeah.
On the CapK, you said an example of the alt getting co-opted was putting trans people on T-shirts.
I said Che Guevara, but
Oh,
I
Che
started
Guevara.
stuttering at that point.
Why is that an example of co-option?
Yeah,
And why
we
does
made
that
an
not?
argument about why zines get co-opted because of production or publishing logics, for example. We said that the same thing happens with Communist Party. Rebranding of communism to look cool.
Well, that seems like neg on presumption then. If neither
well,
of them
no,
we've done
because
is,
we made an argument about why
challenge
our
capitalism.
zine specifically is good. You read a piece of evidence that's pretty vague.
Well,
I
then
think,
why do we
in
have to
describing-
defend Che Guevara on T-shirts? Why is that a dissent to the alt?
Well, it's a claim about why the kind of link that you think that is a link is actually just a result of the system in which these.
Right.
I have
So
one
what
more
we're gonna
super
do,
fast
right?
question.
Yeah,
One more fast question, and I'll even take prep for it.
Okay.
The Allen evidence says that trans people burn out in the party. How do you ensure that trans people don't burn out in the politics?
Networks of care and liberatory strategies. The card is pretty specific to the Marxist Center, which is the context in which Escalante is writing, and how the overrepresentation of trans people in the party said nothing about the way that the party was able to like sort of coalesce around specific political goals, and that resulted in burnout.
Are you all willing to concede the round? Are you all willing to concede the
No,
round?
because we're gonna fucking crush you.
That's the Louisville thing. Remember the Louisville thing, right? When people can see their own.
Okay, 522.
David.
That's right.
The one the president back it up?
522. That is. Sorry, 20.
Barbara. Come on, boys. Let's hope you read a night hero. Got some fingers. Go, LR. Yeah, it's all press power. Must be restricted. Wait,
Sorry, did you stop?
Yeah.
they're like actually reading our app back at us. Wait, that's the card that I cut.
What?
They were like cutting all of our cards back at us.
What app is this?
We read an ATK app against Wake round 1 that's like Trump win an EV, must restrict NFU for press power, and Wyoming just read that back at us.
I love the NDT.
I love it. That's so cute.
Is that what you're looking for?
Yes, thank you. I was, I don't know what I'm looking for.
JCS
Sort of
counterplan, slay.
shambling. There's no cards. The orders.
If it went Wyoming, I would be willing to maybe it's like an Oasis thing. You know, it's kind of shifting to Baudrillard in the next block.
For real. I still love that we read the elections DA back at him.
Wyoming LP, you said?
CW.
CW, okay.
Just T. Just T.
Yes.
And leave space for Larson.
Will do.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's so funny. Does this happen a lot to you?
No.
Oh, first time for everything.
Just like an overview on team. Not very long, but it's there. Is anyone not ready?
Okay. So I just confirmed there's no doc, right?
Yeah.
Debate is a competitive activity structured by fairness. Any alternative account must explain why there must be a winner and loser, why we treat dropped arguments as true, or whether true AR will try to convince you they want to attack. They themselves have demonstrated these competitive incentives, not disclosing tweezy docs on the wiki, attempting to be in the direction of the topic to be palatable to G, calling for a ballot as the end goal of the resolution of the revolution. All of this should demonstrate a disconnect between voting for Iowa and deconstructing transphobia, because the drive to win a ballot overdetermines the radicalism of their project. This uniqueness claim has two implications. A, presumption. Voting for Iowa doesn't endorse trans existentialism, it endorses their deployment of it as a means to a ballot. Rinse and repeat. That has no capacity to alter transphobia, proven by the winning, losing multiple rounds. In the contrary, the debate remaining unchanged. B, controls their offense. The app won't change minds or norms because their opponents will interpret losses as technical referendums, and their judges will coach other teams on how to better answer it immediately. Voting F, they don't meet because they don't defend NFU, nuclear disarm, or abolishing the leg of the triad. Now, I'll explain about this a little bit more and what it means to beat our interpretation a little bit more below. Now, the counter-chirp, it links to our offense. 3 reasons. 1, predictable limits. Abolishing some aspect of communication tangentially related to nukes isn't a functional constraint. Here are some examples. A, discourse claims. The act would require the government to stop using a particular phrase in government documents or treat technical terminology, e.g. call our nukes something different. B, actor plans. Justifies, if the affirmative doesn't have to be national wholesale change, justifies fiating single cities, counties, individuals, or even international actors. Each debater has their own subjective relationship to the resolution, which means the cumulative result is literally billions. C, weapon of the week. They could disarm a single weapon system like B-61s or a single missile system. Don't view this in isolation. Combine them together. The cumulative result is subsets of subsets. 2, ground. The resolution is flawed on purpose. This deprives it, A, of core topic Ds like deterrence and assurances, but also K-links like critiques of conventional IR or tweaks to the nuclear complex. In-depth argument interaction is impossible if the only thing the neg has to say is talking about identity equals extinction. 3, it isn't resolutional. That's unpredictable and infinitely regressive because the res is the only objective stasis point for discussion. It was proposed, voted on, and announced in advance, whereas under the counter-chirp we only find out what the subject of the debate is when Gordon Staples announces our team codes. Non-resolutional interrupts me in the app could functionally change their counter-chirp every debate, which unravels the topic. You should view this as functionally the same as no counter-chirp. There are an infinite number of hypothetical relationships to the res and how that interacts with personal aspects of identity or political praxis. 2 terminals. 1, fairness. Winning should be a function of evidence, familiarity, pre-tournament prep, and skill. Under their model, the app can unilaterally set a value system for the debate and decide the role of the ballot is to reward who has better presented some truth claim that coheres around their theory of how society operates. It makes it literally impossible to be neg because they get to speak first, decide the value system, and then dictate the terms of the debate. Fairness outweighs every interaction in this space depends on competitive neutrality. The fact you're currently trying to constrain your bias or flowing my speech and vote for arms you don't personally believe proves you are predicating your approach to debate on the fair resolution of arguments. If you conclude fair debates are bad because the app made that argument, you are doing so under the assumption that your position as a judge is to fairly determine a conclusion based only off of what we have said. B, everyone comes to debate for different reasons, but they compete because they think they can win. Knowing the app can shift out of research deletes the strongest incentive for card cutting or travel. 2, clash. Focused debates of the same core controversy teach us how to adapt our positions to be more defendable, which generates a second level of nuance. Any interrupt that isn't resolutional rewards the app for dodging everything in our tab. 2 reasons that outweighs. A, impact uniqueness. Debate's unique because the neg has to say no to the app. Contestation is debate's only unique benefit. Other forums like lectures or advocacy groups should be viewed as counterplans that solve their offense. B, straight turn. Our model teaches debaters how to pick apart arguments, adapt to their positions to be more defendable, view issues from a plurality of intellectual angles. Theirs creates momentary specialists who appear to display mastery of a certain subject but lack the toolbox to respond to well-prepared opponents. It means right-wing counter-revolutionaries will be better argumentatively trained, which straight turns the case impacts. Conversely, clash makes us better equipped to advocate for the app, which which make this material implementation more plausible. E.g., when people object to trans existentialism, networks of care, or archival politics, for X reason, you'll be better able to persuade people you're right. Now, switch side, reading the AF as a case solves, flipping science doesn't require endorsing the USFG, AFNIAT is pairing on identity, and a plan is a temporary advocacy. They say disarming the nuclear family. One, this is not a counter term, it's just using the word disarming in context. They did not propose any definitions. They also do not have a definition of the term nuclear force. There are plenty of ways to use a word in context. This card is from animeherald.com, not exactly a reliable source. Contrast that with experts in the 1AC. 2, this isn't what disarm is. That entails dismantling the nuclear arsenal. That's Pablo. It is not some abstract notion of disarming discourse. That is not a coherent understanding of resolutional context. 3rd, nuclear forces are not some abstract social concepts. They are warheads and delivery vehicles. That is our Roberts evidence. Now, our interpretation is that topical plans must defend the government installing nuclear restrictions. That means prohibiting some aspect of the nuclear arsenal via binding regulation. They say explodes limits because of the actor. Damn right, they get to use revolutionaries as actors, providing sufficient room for creative disarm advocacy, but the outcome of that revolution must be a dismantling of the national government's warheads or missiles. That means every topical AF has one huge thing in common, which places a limit on the breadth of claims the neg has to answer and spots us a strong source of predictable offense, meaning every part of the res is key. Picking out of one part of the topic justifies picking out of all of it, so our other words are what matter. Now, they say their narrative coherence. 1, it links to the counter-interp. They attempted to set a predictable limit on the topic, which at some level involves a degree of narrative coherence. If they have a counter-interp that restricts anything, then that regresses into the forms of exclusion that they criticize. 2, no explanation for why these quotes in the 2EC apply to framework. Some blogger being transphobic on the internet is the result of internalized biases, not topicality or framework. Thirdly, this is not a T thing, it's a framework thing. Introducing something as an impact will inevitably evolve, articulating it to people who aren't familiar with dysphoria, or concretizing it as the outcome of an advocacy. They say predictability is negotiated. True, but it is negotiated by T debates. Our internal links are explained above. They show that they negotiate predictability in the wrong direction, which undermines debatability. They say white domesticity. There is just no explanation or articulation about why this is the case. They might say that this is like, oh, you end up debating about nuclear war impacts, but we'll impact turn that in the 1 in R. The nuclear family as a stasis can be disrupted by the TVA, which I'll explain below. They say ample ground. They'll win. We have potential net ground, but that is 1, concessionary and predetermined by the AF, gives them an artificial advantage because they'll choose the most defensible, close to perfect advocacy will give the neg the worst. 2, not predictable because they can change their counter on a debate-by-debate basis. This is magnified by the fact there's no real common ground between different topical AFs. 3rd, the existence of the AFs lit doesn't mean it's predictable in the resolutional context. The mechanism by which that discussion occurs always changes, and even the most salient criticisms will always lose on the permutation. The ballot does not solve their model as per above. Louisville might have been willing to concede the round, but Iowa was not, which demonstrates competitive incentives are still important in this debate. Limits exposure is not non-unique. This is a debate about models of debate. Anything else rewards the affirmative for dodging everything in our top because they can throw up their hands and say it's inevitable. Now, the TVA, I will extend that here. You could disarm the entire arsenal on the grounds that it's inextricably linked to heteropatriarchy. It could look very similar to this 1EC, but it would connect it to a broader political project where we not only criticize the nuclear family, but cite disarmament as part of the goal of that struggle. There's a distinction between that and the 1EC, which is limited strictly to disarming the nuclear family via discourse, which is vacuous and is not related to the resolutional, or is not explicitly grounded in the resolutional controversy. These options rupture the way the debate and the government currently think about nuclear weapons, and also don't rely on the governance schemes or assumptions of heteronormativity that they've criticized. The TVA doesn't have to solve the AF, just demonstrate that their discussion could occur under topical action. Of course, they will win that there are problems with it, but that's called net ground. The archiving DA will be in the 1 in R. Sober is really, he's really ready to go. Sure, you can read a zine on the neg as a counter performance, but the thing that changes in a neg debate is that we get to weigh the plan against that. There's still a locus of responsibility, and if you want to read a zine on the neg, you can do that, but remember, you have to connect it to the 1EC's epistemology. This is distinct because the 1EC, or they do not have a criticism of nuclear disarmament or even NFU. The 1EC is agnostic on those questions. They say propose active strategy. The 1EC does not do that, and regardless of whether they do, remember, you have to apply not just their interpretation of potential affirmatives, but also how teams like Emory or Michigan will apply it, right? Imagine the libertarianism good AF, or I think hegemony is good. It rewards teams for minimizing viable contestation, where the AF can shed the resolution, or how the way that is applied by other big teams. They don't get to fiat that everyone becomes a radical activist, and their model of debate gets nuked by competitive incentives. Now, debate is not good as a site for knowledge production because the AF is drawn to a position that can minimize contestation, and the neg goes for the K that can beat the perm. It causes epistemic distortion
conclusion because debaters are drawn toward the fringes of the literature. The impact is false positives. It means that planners come to the wrong conclusions and get misled. Iowa is very likely to say our understanding of predictability is arbitrary, but they can't say that because they've attempted to introduce at least a countertrope that is in the direction of the topic, which demonstrates some investment with the notion of predictability that they criticize. I'm good.
Second subpoint at the top was ground. You said that your model was key to in-depth engagement. Why is in-depth engagement good?
Because it's important for fairness. If all of the ground is stacked for the affirmative, then it's likely that the AF will always win. It's also important for clash because we can have debates where
Can you
we
explain why it's important for fairness? Like, what is the tie between fairness and in-depth engagement?
Between ground, the neg needs shit to say, right? And so predictable ground against the 1EC ensures that the neg has some source of offense. But if the affirmative can dodge that ground, then it makes it functionally impossible.
I guess what is meaningful about those debates? What is the inherent good that says when we have fair debates, that does X?
So our fairness explanation is are you looking for that or more of the clash stuff?
I'm talking about fairness right now.
So fairness, our two impacts to that are, one, the sort of people started calling it the fairness paradox, that any objection to fairness relies on the form of fairness. You're introducing the argument.
I guess
right,
I didn't answer my question.
validated.
I said what is meaningful about the type of fairness that your model supposedly results in.
So that's what I'm right. It's not just that fairness is instrumental, but it's an intrinsic good. And
Why?
That, because of the explanation that I've given you, any defense to fairness collapses in on itself.
So the judges voting us down would be bad for us too, or something.
What do you mean?
The fairness paradox. That's fine. I guess, can there be meaning in an unfair game?
Meaning unlikely, or at least not benefits, right? Not the sort of things that we operationalize or export from this activity.
Okay, the right wing will be trained better than you argument. Why is that true?
Because in a model of debate, we think where the neg is able to have predictable refutations of the AF, and we have debates over the same core controversies, that teaches debaters to dissect arguments and pick things apart. The alternative means that, or the absence of that means that debaters will lack the toolbox to respond to well-prepared opponents.
Why are prepared debates? Why are prepared college debates key to those dissection skills?
Well, because when the resolution is limited, when we have debates over the same core controversies, that it sort of creates a techne of argumentative refinement where we improve our arguments over the course of the season, and we, when we lose debates, we think, okay, how do we improve our articulation of this argument?
Why does that make debaters leftists? I'm confused about why this is unique to the right wing being trained better.
Well, because if we do not use spaces like this to, improve our articulation of arguments, then it just means that the right wing will.
Who's the right wing? Is the right wing not here too? What is unique about your model that produces these leftists that are going to go out and beat all the right wing?
Well, you can use portable skills for contesting the material manifestations of transphobia or pushing back against DeSantis' brand of fascism.
The order is, I sent the one piece of evidence, but it looks like it's a blank doc. Tough look.
It's okay.
So I have
I sure
just
struggle.
Reciprocity.
Indeed. So I've just reset that piece of evidence. The order is the cap K, topicality, and then the case.
Cap, the bow card, case.
Yep.
And there's a new doc.
Yes.
Awesome.
It's just a re-highlighting of the bow card.
Can I just, are you just doing the bow card?
Ooh. You
On
can re-highlight it.
Okay.
It is kind of weird to be like, you misread this. No.
I know.
That's not what the author thinks.
We'll find out. I'm excited.
Okay. Wait.
It's the second doc.
This is the second doc. Okay, I haven't got this. Oh, here. Got it. Okay. Alright, let's go.
Cap K not going for it, but I'm making two concessions that become offense against Iowa's stuff. First, the t-shirts dissent. Even if the NT-Loser theory of a project is desirable, its form is often co-opted by capitalism. That t-shirt, Che Guevara t-shirt argument is often a slayer in a normal Cap K VKF debate, but they can't say that part since their political strategy is also focused on production and distribution of commodities. This is not only a solvency deficit the case, but a turn. Nothing is stopping Walmart from throwing Iowa's zine on the shelf and profiting off of the exploitation of the workers who produce them. That proves that that part of their political strategy is something that we have impacted. It does not actually produce any material gains. Second is the burnout dissad concede their Allen evidence. It says that despite the MC's theorists and theories coming from trans people, it still led to a burnout and collapse of political organizing. That links to the affirmative as well, because the whole thesis of their political strategy is that it centers trans existentialism and comes from trans theories. This is magnified by ath uniqueness or ath vagueness. When I asked about this card in cross-sex, their answer was that the app centers liberatory strategies. Everything can be a liberatory strategy. The app has some historical analysis in it, but they've handed you a zine, not the actual political strategy the app endorses is quite unclear and is likely to result in the types of burnout that they criticize. Now, topicality, the Larson argument. There's an archiving dissent to Iowa. The 1AC did not participate or center the black radical tradition. In fact, not a single of Iowa's authors is a black trans person. Their evidence says centering black scholarship, not just saying the names of black trans people, is necessary. KU is blue. Larson in 23. White and non-black trans scholars often struggle to destabilize how we vision trans political horizons in respect to black trans life. Non-black scholars must study the lessons found within the black radical tradition. The 1AC conflates black trans solidarity with the mention of black trans names. They've cited the name of a black trans person, Letitia, but haven't explained who she was or what her connection to the 1AC is. This is a toxic model of parasitism that reproduces solidarity as equivalent to what names you know or who you can cite, which is a regressive burden that abdicates responsibility, since trans people talking about the work is equated with trans people being radical. Iowa has invested in the same structures that they criticize. They've showed up to the debate on time and are the side that was announced. The one norm that they've chosen to violate is the one that gives them the greatest competitive advantage, which proves that even if this Larson stuff about violating norms and stuff is links to them just as well, because they have upheld certain structures as well. Topicality is not intrinsically cis. We shouldn't assume productive clash is happening in the SQO, where then every model has the same quality of clash. Striving for a model of debate that allows rigorous testing of the app isn't cis, it's engagement. Now, the case. Debating about nuclear war is good. I'm doing this at the top because Graham wanted it here and I'm not sure where to put it. Learning about how to restrain the U.S. military-industrial complex is important and necessary as political citizens who live in the global north. Otherwise, we become complicit in that violence because we ignore political solutions that prevent the United States, that allow the United States to enact violence on areas in the global south through the use of its nuclear weapons. Now, the presumption arguments. Alternative world-making tactics is vague and unhelpful in the face of cisgender society. I'll answer each answer to presumption. They say praxis is retelling narrative. This is exactly what we've critiqued. Iowa keeps retelling the narrative. That's not a departure from the SQO and isn't key to debate. This encourages, they also drop that this encourages the to find reasons that story is bad because debate is adversarial, and it means that that testing proves that the debate is not the best way for them to share their strategy. They say their second warrant is liberatory projects. What are those projects? How do we get from Ron DeSantis raining on YouTube to a world where trans people can live comfortably and free of transphobia? Iowa has not laid out the specific political strategy of how we get there, and you shouldn't presume that they solve absent that explanation. The last argument is networks of care. Again, how do we get there? How does Iowa ensure that these networks don't get co-opted? There's a networks dissent. Centering networks of care as their telos hurts trans people because it makes them reliant on each other for care instead of capitalists and people exploiting them. Instead, we need liberatory strategies that take power away from those groups instead of just forming networks of care that allow trans people to rely on each other. There's no trans panic dissent. Voting on presumption isn't presuming toward an anti-trans status quo. It's saying that the app hasn't presented a solution to solve. In the same way, Iowa shouldn't get credit for pointing out problems without identifying an effective solution. They need to solve the harms they identify through a shift from the status quo. That was the standard set in the 1NC, and Iowa has not proven that they met that or given an alternative way for you to do things like evaluate presumption or evaluate case solvency. Because any amount of shifting from the step, because any that allows the affirmative to point out problems without identifying an effective solution. The Rockwell evidence attempts to discursively deconstruct gender fail. We need a materialist analysis of why gender exists and how transness gains coherence. They're mentioning the history of the Red Scare isn't materialist. They haven't identified a specific material structure or how gender comes to form. The app also doesn't solve essentialism. That was an assertion in the 2AC without any explanation, and all of our presumption stuff proves that they don't solve it. The Gilly evidence dovetails pretty well with our dissets that we extended on the CapK. The actual writing process of writing zines proves that that example of their world making fails and is offense against the affirmative. Gilly says that the way zines are written, produced, and distributed is a fundamentally material process which is not accessible to all trans people because of those productive capacities and what actually is included in the zines, etc. The fact that Iowa's zine includes things that help them win a debate round is because of the competitive incentives surrounding those things and proves that their strategy isn't actually liberatory. The Ramont evidence, the home, the house, and domestic as spaces of organizing are captured by white people. It represents a capitulation to racial politics that sees white home ownership as something radical. The way they enter into space recreates occupation and the discipline of etiquette. Their whole disruption of debate is white trans people teaching others to, quote, mind their manners, which doesn't destabilize how power is created, determined, or stabilized. It means that even if they disrupted gender, the family, or transnormativity, Iowa's demand to go back home is what evades accountability and turns debate back into pseudo-radicalism at the cost of effective mobilization demands. This also dovetails with our arguments, the archiving dissent that we read on Topicality that proves that Iowa's politics is not actually radical, but just collapses into white homeownership. I'm done.
We have
Hang on, right, 9:06. You good? Okay.
yeah.
Oh, sorry, good. I'll see you.
Which book?
On framework.
At the bottom.
Yeah.
I don't see.
Yeah, it's there. Oh, I'm sorry. I put it in green.
Oh.
Yeah, by accident, but that's okay.
Joint flow.
Okay, girl. I'm gonna dance below.
Okay. Sorry.
Good pick. I mean, gotta. I would love one. Thank you so much. I'll do this piece. Avoid going through the middle. Thank you. I knew this would be my favorite date of the year.
This is a good one for round 3.
I don't think it should be that one.
It might be.
It should be. The honor to be able to judge it twice. I mean, that was a good pick. Who's Mackie doing right now?
UCO.
After that,
Nay.
against counterfactual Japan. 1940s politics.
We were unsure if it was actually counterfactual at first. I think it was very dramatic in context.
Mm-hmm.
And we were like, no, this is definitely counterfactual.
True. Apparently, the last debate I was talking to Cal, and they were the Soviet deterrence CI. I love that.
I love that.
All of the let's play the game.
We also really like Harvard, a little comic counterplan.
Ari told me
And
she's
so
out.
we're just rocking with the world thinking, you know?
Hell yeah. That was round 1, I remember. So what was round 2 for you? I just they're really good. I was,
RPS great.
of course, the best. I was from round 1 against NYU, and it was just like the most wholesome debate before this debate, of course. I just love everyone. Like, endlessly good questions. Everyone was thoughtful. Just like high quality debating. The panel was cute. It was like me, Jared, Burke, and like Nord from NYU. And that was round 1.
Yeah, I like that you teach other girls.
I love that y'all hired Peach Laws. Makes me so happy. I was like, that's kind of cracked.
I was like, how did they hire before me for the, before the app for the NDT?
I was like, I saw that. I was like, okay, so it's over for us? Like, what do we do?
You stop practicing.
Yes. Wait, you see the picture.
Read 30 seconds.
It's great.
That was so cute. I also love that they're just like, yeah, let's deterrence and assurance with Bow and Fuseball. My kind of team, I love that.
Okay.
They're also fast as fuck. Like, I didn't realize. I have never sweat that much in the debate than I did judging them.
Which team is this?
McAllister?
Oh, yeah.
They're speed demons. Watch out.
Appreciate that.
Oh, I mean, I appreciate it more. It makes me happy as a judge.
Case KT.
Case KT. Is there a doc?
No.
Love it.
The one in our cards and this in.
There could be another bow re-highlighted.
Okay. Anyone not ready? Food affirmative for a program trans-existential and that come together around the kitchen table to break from the nuclear family, the site of social reproduction, and proliferate networks of care outside of it. Your ballot rejects their notions of content neutral, clash and fairness, and builds engagement of the racialized and gender structures that their model forces us to see as inevitable, mundane, and neutral. We are winning their model of debate and racist transphobic violence, not just through its content, but also through selective inclusion, things like the TVA and Switchside, conceded links back to R2 impacts of spectacularity and domesticity, which mirrors how Jorgensen's inclusion into the nuclear family and proliferated external racialized violence through objection of Lisa, Martha, and Laverne, and produce internal violence herself because measuring progress through the inclusion means we're only ever defined in opposition to that which we are not close enough. It answers the vast majority of the work on case because it all demonstrates the reasons why bracketing this cisgender attitude out of our politics is key. Otherwise, any politics that does not do that would group Lisa, Martha, and Laverne back in with Jorgensen and fail to see the textures of that anti-trans, of the racialized gender assignation that played into that anti-trans violence. Debating about nuclear war is not good at the expense of meaningful trans engagement, which will be on the framework flow, but we do not have to grapple with Ron DeSantis because it's not an advantage to their model, nor can we solve it. We are winning Nature's claim about why the establishment of trans networks up here outside of political spaces are the most accessible way for kids, for example, to get access to HRT in states where it is made illegal instead of begging to, like, Congress people who don't care and want us dead anyway. They say it makes trans people reliant on each other. Yes, trans networks up here are good. It would be cool. Cis people could be meaningful, could be included in these, but they haven't offered an alternative method to get there. It also assumes an understanding of trans politics is only engageable by trans people, which is the individualistic logic of ownership. The read impact turned and will be the framework and the CAPK. No, the materialist analysis. We are in a analysis of the history of white womanhood relationship to its material effects in relationship to the development of nuclear weapons. If this is good and necessary to have materialist analysis of gender, that's a concession that their model cannot solve because it brings us in discussions over this. Ready? Zines will be answered on the CAFLO, the home stuff. What he sees is not a reclamation, the home or domestic space. Remember, this card relies on the kitchen table as aesthetic. Ideal, but the intrinsic to the table is the domestic. Our argument is that we break the public-private divide, which is the internal link to the impact of this card. So when he seeks cross-sex, and then two, we see talk about how New World disorder takes up public spaces and makes them places for trans community, making the break from the kitchen table as a site of social reproduction, which brackets this is attitude in order of politics. Go to the CAFLO, the t-shirt thing, they must win. There's an internal link to this debate, not the co-option happens in general. No way the scene is sold to Balder because it's not a commodity. There's only way the right from music is, which is what this card stands. It's not a self-suggested or a case term. A case term. They also have to. You must evaluate the zine in relationship to its content. Marxist center. No, this is about. This is a demonstration of what we mean when we say that not centering meaningful trans participation causes burnout. It relates to them. It empties transes from our politics and says that including trans people, period, absent analysis of transes is enough. So it circulates trans people as empty containers, which is the distinction that, for example, Moten makes between Black life matters and Black lives matter, or trans life and trans lives. There is an essential quality to the experience of trans that radicalizes. So we might not be able to articulate it, what it is, but we can see it in the way that, for example, so many trans people are involved in leftist spaces. What is it about trans life that radicalizes us? Is something that we can center. That essence is the thing that their model writes out, which means this links to them, not us. Now go to framework. I will extend the interpretation of the attribute method for restricting nuclear forces group. The limits and predictability claim they fundamentally misunderstood the status quo of critical racialization. We read against the bias screen of the topic to engage in a discussion over the ways in which the topic is meaningful to our lives. Only we have discussed how preparation happens under a model. We do not derive predictability from textual definitions in VK debate, but from the archive of critical debate that spans back decades. Those ongoing conversations are rendered by their model narratively incoherent, which is conceded. This has, but our model retools the combative incentives to generate engagement with trans archival reading practice and compounds on our next to the black radical tradition, or refuses to sacrifice certain segments of our populations via reform. It retools combative incentives to force engagement. Remember when Louisville gave up ballots, teams stopped engaging with them, which clearly the bloc didn't understand when they asked us if we would give up this ballot. Our argument is that it's good to force them to engage. Now I'll do the bow step at the top. They are wrong about their reading of the one AC. It proves our argument about meaningful participation. They name the inclusion of Letitia in the zine as parasitism without a warrant or knowing why her photos are in the zine. They just don't have the context. That changed. The zine came after a round against Long Beach with they better argument about the erasure of Letitia from the zine. That form of contestation where CSU could hold us accountable for the erasure in the zine is responsible for the subsequent getting changed to the gap. Curtis wrote a poem and we asked him if we could include some portions of it and her picture in the zine, and we researched together. That is what Bojo describes about the generativity, black and trans debate, and the kind of ways in which those proliferate and compound on each other that are happening through indebtedness is also an example of trans archival practice because it demonstrates the ways in which we can build on each other and build on our politics instead of being tooled solely by competitive incentives. It proves that our model cannot access our offense because it forecloses the affirmative and negative strategies that we have engaged in order to make the what I see possible, which is only made possible through reading and across the bias screen of the topic in order to understand its investments. Right-wing co-op is doublespeak. This argument was absurd, especially in cross-explaining are making a claim that clash is content neutral. The more, the better. It means that they are the ones who train right-wing politicians because they train us to do things like engage in nuclear reformism, which we have said is bad. Actors, you have a million actors because you could do single actor and a views, etc. All because you have not defined. You have arbitrarily failed to define some words in the resolution in order to talk past us because we have not outlined interpretations of words and topic, but instead a model of debate. It may not have shaped Kansas subjectivity, but it should meaningfully shape ours. There are a couple people in this panel who've been participated in the trans debate tradition, and then one who coaches it. You know that there's something meaningful about trans participation in debate. Feminist paradox is absurd, relies on two different kinds of fairness. There's still fair adjudication and KVK debate. Suicide is a solid example. The Long Beach debate and the Bow evidence proves because their role for the affirmative requires to make us more predictable through interpolation into the topic, which limits out the kind of engagement that debate can have. Concessionary grounds inevitable. If Michigan thought it was good to read a K, like winning to read a KF, they do the status quo. TVA archiving decide turns it. Erases debates about the nuclear family doesn't solve our offense and imagines meaningful trans participation through inclusion, trans culture without answering how trans is meaningful in that participation, which is we don't let it affect our politics. We just tack it on at the end.
He's kicking ass. We got the couch.
T and then the K.
Yes, and then
The case.
T, K, K.
Yes. Is anyone not ready?
The AF must propose and defend a topical action. The 1 and C read topic-specific cards establishing a resolution requirement for tackling nuclear disarm, NFU, or abolishing a leg of the triad. 2 framing issues the 2AR does not get new answers to. 1. Competition overdetermines radicalism. Debates a game structured by a shared desire to win. The 1AR has no counter-explanation for why there must be a winner and loser, why clipping is universally rejected, why the AF didn't disclose 2 AC docs moved in the direction of the topic to preempt or called for a ballot. Competition means Iowa will always mold their AF in the direction of winning debates or genuine change. There's a cruel optimism impact that voting AF can't export solvency because the AF status as an instrument calibrated to win towards its revolutionary potential, because neither their opponents nor judges will gauge it as made in good faith conceded. This is proven by them both winning and losing multiple debates and nothing changing about how research operates. 2. Ballot framing. Fairness outweighs because the ballot solves it. Voting AF doesn't change the way nukes are taught or the way transphobia permeates the community, and they'll just read the same AF whether they win or lose, and they've already performed, so the ballot is totally disconnected from their impacts. The only thing it can do is disconnect an unfair advocacy from an unfair outcome. Before you vote on any impact, you have to ask, will me pressing enter on tab change X? For all but fairness, the answer is no. Their counter does not solve any of our offense. 1. Predictable limits. What is it? They don't have a definition of what nuclear forces are, what disarm means. They never even attempted to define the terms that they use in the 2C. In fact, they have dropped all of our definitions of disarmament as requiring tangible eliminations of the U.S.'s federal nuclear arsenal or some tangible risk constraint on the way that the government deploys nuclear weapons. That means they do not meet their own counterinterpretation. They've dropped judge instruction that if this AF meets, every AF does. Evaluate this as an unlimited topics, because means debaters they can say whatever they want that's tangentially related to nukes and then compel their opponents to answer it. There are an infinite number of ways to tweak nuclear policy or discourse around the margins or connected to a broad social force like colonialism or transphobia. An unmanageable research burden breeds superficial research paradigms that stack the deck for the AF to ground. Their term encourages perfect 1ECs or moral truisms. The AF could disarm the nuclear family and then sit down, compelling the neg to say nuclear family good. Remember, K teams have to be neg. Their term rewards the AF for proposing the least controversial mechanism possible, which guarantees the neg always loses absent resorting to ridiculous extremist arguments. KVK debates don't solve our offense. They concede they stack the deck for one side because the affirmative gets perms. We still need a reason why the AF is affirmatively bad. Second is that it boxes the neg into a smaller number of positions that they'll have blocked to the 2AR. Winning that identity, talking about identity equals extinction isn't a valuable or viable strategy, which turns their offense. They say archive. Everyone has a different understanding of the history of debate. Policy debaters obviously understand the archive very differently. The way that we reach consensus and predictability is through textual definitions. Non-art resolutional interpretations enable the affirmative to change their counter every debate, which changes our definition of predictability and turns the topic into a moving target. The impact to all of this is fairness. It outweighs because it's a procedural and determines the extent to which engagement can happen at all. If we win an internal link, the case is irrelevant because we're guaranteed to lose if the AF can speak first, dictate the debate's value system, and no link offense and then reward themselves for endorsing their own theory of how society operates. 2 terminals. 1. Fairness can't be detached from debate. Jettisoning equity shifts argument evaluation from rendering conclusions on tactical debating to gut checks made by personal opinions. They've been delivered in a technical format with an expectation of neutrality and unbiased decision making. We don't have to win. Fairness is good, but defense to it is incoherent and thus can't be endorsed. It's not 2 different kinds of fairness. This is a distinction without a difference. And if you do conclude that it doesn't matter about neg for no reason, 2. Debate is meaningless if it's divorced from competition. We're all drawn to debate for different reasons. Some of us want to be better scholars, advocate someone community. Others want fun. Whatever value you get from debate, fairness is a prereq to it. Skewed models eliminate the expectation of neutrality that makes the hundreds of hours that we pour into this activity worthwhile. If the neg can't win debates, there's no incentive to improve our research practices or innovate. The fact that the AF is even here to prove that they see some value in debate's integrity, whether that's for revolution or recreation, is irrelevant because getting any subjective benefit isn't possible if the topic has exploded. Archiving DA. Now, 1, we've turned it. Larson says their project needs to center the black radical tradition. Iowa has not done so. Mentioning a black trans woman offhandedly is not the same as centering black trans scholarship. Dropped it. Not a single one of the Winnie's authors is a black trans woman. They say they had a debate with Long Beach. Argument the way they've modified their AF after that debate is parasitic on black trans women. If anything, the story proves they were only footnoting black trans women by adding them to their AF post facto when they lose a debate on it. Proves that both competitive incentives and at the core of the Winnie's don't center the black radical tradition, rather tax it on after they lose a debate. That person when he sees an example of the white trans feminism they attempt to critique and will inevitably be exclusionary to black trans women by creating a toxic model of parasitism. You should be willing to vote on this argument independent of topicality. It means that the act is inevitably exclusionary of black trans people and it's a performative argument. We're not going for clash, so that's above. The right-wing stuff is clearly unrelated to debate. It's a relatively liberal community, and if anything pushes people left, not right. All causes prove no solvency because DeSantis was not a policy debater. We solve the million actors stuff. We don't have a million actors because there are functionally just two, the USFGs or the revolutionaries that overturn it. It means there's a huge to limit on the breadth of claims the night is first to answer. The difference is there's a more limited scope of arguments, and we always get deterrence good ground. Of course, you've been influenced by trans debate, but we have as well. There are also trans debaters who have read plans or used the traditional debate technique. There's a universalism turn to their offense because they're introduced groups all trans debaters into a single monolithic community. Concessionary ground is not inevitable because voting neg on T deters win-seeking teams like Michigan to go for things. Okay, I'm just gonna kick it.
Yep. We'll extend these.
Oh, okay. T-shirt TA. Their answer is evaluate the zine in relation to its content. Strike that argument. It's the opposite of what the Juicy said. Che Guevara T-shirts, their own example, proves that content can be revolutionary, but the form is commodified. Drop that Walmart can exploit people to sell the zine that Iowa gives out and profit off of it. Even if they don't intend it to be a commodity, it becomes one under capitalism. Proves the political strategy gets squatted and leads to more exploitation outweighs the case. Second, burnout TA. Their emphasis centering trans theory and participation still results in burnout. Centering or talking about trans people is not sufficient to produce a political strategy to combat transphobia. They even say they don't try to solve Ron DeSantis on the case. If that's true, how does Iowa's political strategy combat transphobia? Getting hormones to trans children is happening in the status quo, and we can do it outside of competitive formats. Case, presumption. The 1EC does not resolve the harms they've identified through shift from the status quo. The F has gestured toward liberatory strategies and alternative world making without giving you a roadmap of how we get there.
We have 3 through 6. We have to count things.
I'm going to use the bathroom, but not this bathroom.
That's really reasonable. You were brave for that.
Is it? I feel like it's right.
I've been
there.
going to my room
I-
because I'm just.
I have a room though.
That's fair. Oh yeah, you are in the other hotel. I've been going down to the bottom floor just because Jackie has the one key. There was,
I think we're all being silly about it, and it's probably totally fine.
but round 2,
Mhm.
you would think. Round 2, one of the debaters I was judging came out of the bathroom in the room and said, well, that was queerphobic. And I said, excuse me? And they said, well, my stomach gets upset sometimes, and I'm sorry in advance.
Oh.
And it was the worst thing in the world because we can't open the window.
Okay, they should have taken that one outside.
They literally should have gone outside. It was so bad. I was judging like this. Your handwriting's so pretty.
See, I don't feel like it is. I just write really small to hide the fact that I have terrible handwriting.
I can read your handwriting, so it's better than mine.
Okay, but it is a little legible. That.
The tiny thing is like, I'm so jealous of. For some reason, like, I would be told by professors as an undergrad that my handwriting looked like third graders. It was so big and wimpy.
When I do write big, that's how it always turns out.
Mm-hmm. That's just my default, like, that's nice.
Case A framework. I'm going to be pulling the Bow dispute up to the case page because it's important.
Look at you.
Case K topicality, you said?
Is everyone good to go?
Yes.
Vote Alpha in the archiving dissent is an impact to unpredictable limits is the interlink to Kansas's fairness impact because they have dogmatically negotiated in advance of this debate what interpretation of the topic should look like the TVA and switch side or non-starters because we're winning a top of claiming about the violence of being included into the model in the first place. Every 2 hour argument relies on the assumption that a vertical model of political engagement is neutral and equally predictable and thus more fair, which you should come back to when you evaluate the flow because we have one claim about why debates under our model key to access to the intent politics that both sides are integral to the generativity of black and trans debate now, but they have gone for a strong fairness push at the top, but Bo says that the question of access and conditions of inclusion posed by limits of clash are necropolitical because they require inclusion into dominant political frames that require me to disavour deaths and create worlds that make violence possible in the first place, which precede the impact of fairness and means our spectacularity impact outweighs any risk of fairness loss because their model is positioned as content neutral while revolutionary black and trans politics are the spectacular outside that we can observe but not engage. I'm gonna pull the bow highlighting up to the top here because we have critiqued it. They are a liberal individualist politics that assumes reading black authors is necessary and sufficient condition to engage with the black radical tradition. That is wrong and dangerous because their argument is a double turn with itself. They claim that mentioning black trans women is parasitic, but that also modifying the Z to include black trans women is parasitic because it is devoid of an understanding of how indebtedness works because they filter it through an individual notion of identity that assumes that some idealist version of inclusion. They presume that we should simply shout out black authors, but does not require meaningfully engaging with their work, develop our politics, which is the reason why our model always theirs has happened against, for example, the round against Launch Beach, where we didn't just modify the scene, we talked to them about the research that they did, what they found out about Letitia, how it influences the app, and then made the modifications to the app. Remember, none of this is possible under their model. This logic might say that reading a black thinking author who thinks we should first start China is the black radical tradition because they understand it through the logic of identity and not meaningful engagement, whereas our model builds and proliferates engagement with the textures of the black radical tradition in debate as compounds non-trans debate. Negation isn't just about trying to get the W, it's about accountability that builds our politics, which is a model of engagement that we have forwarded but not done. That's our examples about debate against Long Beach that shape the one to see an archive in and of itself. Those are nuances and moments that are flattened by their model, which writes out all of that sort of engagement that happens as meaningless. Here is how you are weighing impacts and indebted. A model of debate means you should resist the impulse to presume that their version of resolution of focus through fairness is an established good. They say that you cannot weigh procedural impacts against structural ones, but that flows out because we're winning a prior question about how an archive of state-based content that they determine fairness often predetermines procedural questions of fair debates. Even if they win a minimal impact clash, we still win the debate because any benefit to our model they don't access the reasons why you should prefer a radical trans polity, even if it is procedurally unfair, which independently impacts trans framework that only our model solves doing more impact work there, but we are winning the project if the app is good, the cave nuclear domesticity under US empire, which means only the app is able to provide a counter archive to the way nuclear violence is co-constituted to the interpersonal material domestics of nuclear violence. So we extend trans archive practices networks here examples of how the app asks what we can do with our time and entry when we are gathered around the table, examples of new disorder or needle sharing proof. This is their wealth participating movements that enact the spaces that translates essentialism as liberatory projects, i.e. the way the new world disorder takes the public spaces for a living and utilizes them to engage in transsociality proves the method the F is good. Now the cap page one, no, the presumption argument doesn't have the presumption argument doesn't have a warrant in the 2 and R. We've won that the bracket needs to stand out of politics is key to move towards collectivity. The cap argument, the no impact for modification. We don't sell this in Allen evidence. There's some trans networks. The last racist card reverse is an example of the way that they but in politics, the politics where it wasn't trans enough is a yes no question if there were trans people there, which is also turning the framework model. Ellen says that logic is what led to the collapse of the Marxist center and the injection of trans antagonism even into left politics is that including trans people is not the same as centering politics where trans is meaningful in its participation. Trans people got burned out because they were forced to labor for a world in which our concerns can't be centered, which is exactly what their model does. Failure to go to framework now, failure to rescind TVA switch is a concession that their model can't solve any or impacts you. Should frame the flow through that question because we have defense of their interpretation and offense to ours, but they have no defense to our interpretation. Extend the counter of the Asher defended method of restricting nuclear forces, trying debates about the nuclear family were the most important parts of the topic, which means that wedding the limits are a bad model given that we'll always limit our debates about the unity and advantage trans balances answers in the link to fairness to resolve arguments and solve their impacts, but not the other way around because predictability to mutually negotiated meaning our content is predictable to people who have relationships with nuclear forces not captured by their model. Proves our impact trend because the negotiation they have done disavows the legacy of candidates that Bo describes from Louisville to Emporia to everything that has looked at the resolution this year and thought about their relationship to it by reading across the bias rating the topic. No, that the limits explosion outweighs that process because only we have one claim about why those types of negation under our model produce meaningful participation, not just inclusion under their model debates, development and endlessly debates about ours, but conversations about politics which answers all their top level voters. Competitive incentives is not true. We blame turn because competitive incentives are good, but only under our model because the form of negation that our model forwards is one that's about accountability, not just competition. Second, the balance and solve argument. Yes, it does. You can vote them down for advocating for a bad model defaults. Why endorsing the competitive incentives under our model good. Their defense of the counter-interpretation is then solve the predictable limits argument. We critique limits setting based on definitions because negotiation under our model. So our model is built around the archive of K debate, not around legal definitions, which is good because it's approximate to the people in the room. The discourse and fairness paradox argument negation is good and possible under our model. The assumption that it's possible to board that is impossible is born of a dogmatic adherence to a debate tradition that doesn't see chaos as real coherent arguments in the first place, but says the negation is both externally generated by competitive incentives that can be used to hash out disagreements and organizing tactics and internally worthwhile because it participates in building a web of death that refuses the logic to building out the fairness paradox. Did you even listen to our speeches? We made a specific argument about the limits setting your model doesn't why it's bad. I don't need to win the fucking speech times about in order to win our office conspiring. There's no argument about why you vote negative unfairly even if we win the debate. The last couple arguments will all turn by a couple framing their conception of fairness is built on the argument debate that we critique. The last argument about debates are meaningless without fairness is not true. Everyone in this room has been touched by trans debate in ways that are external to fairness, which means any rest of our offense appears to be running affirmative to reject the archive that they have built their model around and instead affirm an indebted model of debate, which attends to the generativity possible through a better model of competitive incentives.
Before everyone leaves, which is so reasonable and valid, I just want to confirm seniors. I know